Hello, this is Brandykins, and welcome to another episode of the Terrorific Talk podcast. This is episode 3. In this episode, I speak with RissaHavok, a content creator on twitch.tv/RissaHavok. I speak with her about her thoughts on horror movies, horror games, and how horror influences fashion. This is a live interview recorded on twitch.tv/Brandykins, so sit back, relax, and enjoy. Well, hello, everybody out there, and welcome to another episode of Terrorific Talk. And what another fabulous episode this is, because I am interviewing a lovely human being tonight by the name of RissaHavok, who is a content creator on Twitch. So, hello. How are you?
Hi.
How are you
I'm doing
doing?
really well. How are you?
I am doing fabulous. So, this is your first podcast.
It is. Yeah, I've never done one of these before, but I've listened to a ton of podcasts. I'm kind of a big fan of there's a couple scary Game Squad guys. I don't know if you've ever heard of like Jesse Cox or any of them, but
Yes.
they actually do the Chilluminati podcast. I'm a huge fan of that one.
Oh, I'll have to check that out. I listen to a lot of Chilling Tales for Dark Nights on YouTube. I don't know if you heard of that channel, but if you have it, it's fabulous.
I have not heard of that one. Yeah, I need to broaden my horizons, I guess, when it comes to more like horror podcasts.
So that first podcast. So thank you for being a guest on my podcast, for it being your first. I hope it goes well for you.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. It's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess let's just go ahead and just jump right into things. I always like to start off my podcast with asking the question about why people love a particular genre or what gets them all fired up about it. So for you, why horror? What is it about horror and the horror genre that makes you love it so much?
You know, it's really funny. I was actually talking to a friend kind of recently about this, and it's so hard to explain to other people what it is about horror sometimes that just really resonates with a person. Like for me, I don't know, I've always been interested into like in like the weirdest things. Like I just I don't know, I always love like just everything that's like not on the path that everyone else is going on, right? I've always been kind of like a punk, kind of a rebel kind of person. And I think horror is just like one small example of a thing that I just really enjoy that most other people don't really like, or at least a lot of people don't really like. I have a ton of friends who just, they will not go to see a horror movie with me. They won't watch it, they don't want anything to do with it, they don't like haunted houses, things like that, and I'm just like, but that's everything that I love. So why, I don't really know. I guess I'm just kind of a weirdo like the rest of us, right?
Yeah, it's just like being normal is boring.
Yeah, I don't know, it's something about like the darkness and like the fear of the unknown a little bit that is oddly enough kind of intriguing to me. So yeah, I don't know. I just love it.
I
I love
just,
everything about it.
man, I do too. Just like horror has always been one of my favorite genres because I felt that the stories within horror are, not to say that not all stories like are unique like in other genres, but I felt in horror you could really explore just the aspects of the human condition and the effects of horror on a person's psyche. So with saying that, what was your first experience that you remember with horror? So the
I,
earliest like show that you watched, spooky thing that you read. Like,
yeah. Oh gosh, this is really funny because I think about this moment a lot. But probably my first real experience with horror was uh I was a young child. I can't even remember how old I was, but I remember just being so little that this terrified me to death. But I walked into my parents' my house that I grew up in, my living room. My dad was sitting on his like recliner chair in front of the TV. All the lights were off, and he was watching. I think it was Nightmare on Elm Street. It was one of the Freddy movies. Um, and he I mean, like, he was so immersed in it, he just loved it. He was really, really enjoying it. And I walked in and I was like, what is this? What is this? This looks really spooky. I don't know what this is, but I was so little that I didn't even come into the living room all the way. I don't even know if he thought I was there, or if he like even saw me or not. But I was just kind of hiding behind his recliner, like, I'm really interested, but I'm also terrified. It was really strange because I was so afraid of it, but at the same time, like, just like, this is intriguing to me. I've never seen a movie like this before because, as a young kid, you're watching a lot of Disney movies. You're watching a lot of,
Yep.
like, if you are watching, like, real life, like, non-animated action, it's going to be more on the lighter, happier, family-friendly side. And this was really, like, one of my first experiences of seeing anything like that. And I don't know, to this day, Freddy still scares me. And it's so funny because he's so he's so not scary at all. He's so not scary at all. He's really, really funny sometimes. But I think it's like the idea of, I don't know, you can't ever fall asleep, and eventually you will fall asleep and there's nothing you can do about it. And at some point he's gonna get you. It's that whole like idea behind it. Like, there's nothing you can do about it. So yeah, to this day, I'm still very terrified of Freddy Krueger, even though you could argue that a lot of other classic slashers are way scarier. But I don't know. I think it was because of that childhood experience.
Yes, Fred. I remember Nightmare on Elm Street wasn't the first one that I saw, but I always thought the concept behind the story was so unique that a killer that could only get you in your dreams and pretty much you were screwed. Like,
yeah,
you had to sleep. I mean, it's not like you can stay awake forever. So the concept behind that, yeah, it was always so fascinating to me. So kind of as a side tangent, did you see the remake or the reboot of Nightmare on Elm Street, the one that came out, I think, in like 2009?
I did. And here's an unpopular opinion, is that I didn't mind it too much.
Oh.
I thought a lot of people really, really hated it. And I definitely don't think it's the best one at all by any means. But there were elements to it that I really enjoyed. And now it's been years. I saw it when it first came out in theaters, was probably the last time I watched it. Because obviously I don't think I loved it enough to rewatch it necessarily, but I remember like actually having an okay time and just kind of enjoying myself and not letting like the little things that I don't necessarily agree with get in the way of my entertainment and enjoyment of it. I try to go into any new horror film with an open mind, especially reboots. Sometimes it doesn't work and sometimes it does,
Yeah. Do you agree? Sorry, not do you agree, but do you think that the whole fact that Robert Englund wasn't Freddy in this movie, it was Jackie Earle Haley, I think, that took up the mantle of Freddy. Do you think that kind of soured people a little bit to the movie from the beginning?
I think it probably did. I mean, you don't have that classic character. He's different. He is different in this one. It's a much darker, scarier kind of take on it. And I mean, Freddy as a natural character is very dark and scary, but Robert Englund is able to, I don't know, bring sort of like the humanity out of a character like Freddy Krueger. Whereas I don't think there was a whole lot of that with this new guy. Like I don't know, it didn't resonate. I know it didn't really resonate with me as much as Robert Englund's take on it. So I would imagine that probably a lot of people had the same general idea of it. But there were elements of the movie that I did enjoy. So, it's not necessarily all about the acting for me. Sometimes it's about like the ambience or the sound effects or, lots of other different elements that get brought to the table.
Yeah, I didn't have a problem with the new Freddy. I thought acting-wise, like, he was fine. Of course, like, no one can beat Robert Englund when it comes to the character of Freddy Krueger. I guess my main issue with it was the fact that it came during that time where they were trying to humanize or give just, like, a little bit, like, too much over-humanity to these villains. Like, the slant that they took that maybe he wasn't, like, a pedophile, and then, like, later on it's like, just kidding, he totally is. It's just like, then why didn't you make him like that to begin with? Not to say, like, yeah, it's gross, obviously, like, the kind of shit that he did, but, yeah. No.
No, yeah,
No.
I totally
Yeah.
feel that. I totally understand like your
Yeah.
point on that because I think that that's valid.
But yeah,
Yeah.
it wasn't like a hot garbage like thing of a movie. It was okay, but to me, it doesn't like really compare to the originals. It was okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
So
would agree.
yeah. So speaking of classic horror villains, are there any others that just make you be like, ooh?
So any of the classic slashers for me are some of my most favorite horror movies of all time. So I actually just went and saw the new Halloween yesterday. Um,
Oh, nice. What are your thoughts on that?
I loved it. I loved it. And I actually have quite a few friends who were kind of bashing on it a little bit in my Facebook post because I was so excited. I was like, this is actually really great. And they were like, we have problems with it. I'm like, Debbie Downers. Um but yeah, I really, really enjoyed it. I don't want to give anything away because I know not
Mm-hmm.
everybody has seen it yet. I don't know whether or not you've seen it yet.
I have,
Um,
yes. I saw it on Friday. So,
Okay, cool. Yeah, so I don't want to give away like specific plot points or
uh,
anything like that. But I will say that I loved the nostalgia factor that they brought. I felt like it wasn't too heavy.
yes.
I felt like it wasn't very forced, that it kind of just felt very natural to the entire movie. I liked some of the cinematography, some of the shots and camera angles that they did were very much homages to like the original Halloween, and I loved it. And again, it didn't feel forced to me. It felt like it was supposed to be that way, like it was supposed to be naturally be that way. But at the same time, there were still like a lot more modern takes on, from if you're looking at him as a killer from the first Halloween movie to him as a killer
Yeah.
now it's like he's on a rampage now. I
Yeah,
mean,
no kidding.
some of those kills were wow.
Yeah. Oh my god. Brutal. But then, of course, that's Michael Myers for you. It's just,
Yeah, I mean, you expect that out of him, right?
yeah.
I think something that I also really enjoyed was the fact that it was all practical effects
Oh,
uh,
absolutely.
with those moments. Because I don't know, maybe I'm too old school, but there's nothing that I hate more than overused CGI in horror films. I just don't feel like it gives the same experience.
I definitely would agree with you there. It was also an homage to, like, since Carpenter was involved in the films, also homage to some of his earlier films that weren't necessarily horror, like Escape from New York, and then also my favorite horror film of all time, John Carpenter's The Thing. Even though those were gross special effects, they were also just like very practical. It's just like
Yeah.
I love John Carpenter so much. Just like any like one of his films, I just like I will fangirl over. I absolutely adore that. Adore him. And I do agree. And I do agree with you on the fact that it was a nod to the 1978 Halloween. I like the fact that it's a direct sequel to that as well. But
Yeah.
and the cinematography, especially when it came to Michael Myers, the shape. Oh, I remember there's this one shot like near the end where they just have him just like standing there and he's just like shaded like in shadow and darkness, and all you can see is just like the shadowing on his face. Ah!
Yes, for sure. Yeah, there were lots of those like little moments
Mm-hmm.
where I honestly, and it takes a lot to scare me with horror films because I've seen so many, and it's all I ever really watch in
Yeah.
my downtime is scary things. Um uh so it takes a lot to scare me, but I honestly was on the edge of my seat pretty much the entire movie. It's very, very rare that that happens to me. So I feel like if I had that experience, then it must be a good movie, right?
Right. It's especially with people who love horror as much as us. We tend to be case hardened when it comes to like the scares. Like,
Yeah.
and Jamie Lee Curtis's performance, I have to, as an addendum, was fabulous. I loved
So
her in that movie.
so I actually really, really thought it was a very interesting way that they kind of wrapped up her story.
Mm-hmm.
Um, how it's supposed to be like right after this is a direct sequel to the first one, but 40 years later, after all of those things have happened to her, what happens to a woman who's been through something so traumatic and doesn't get help for it?
Right.
And I just loved that sort of, I don't know, that sort of shift in her where it's like it's still Laurie Strode, but she is just a different person. And it's because she went through something so horrible. And it's like, what would that do to you? You know, what would that do to a person? And I just love the insight there.
I do too. It's like, because I remember she said in an interview that this is a girl that after like it all happened, she probably went to school the next day. She didn't have access to mental health services, so she pretty much just had to work through all of it on her own. And I just love just pretty much how it shows, just like you said, the shift and also the strength and resilience of her, and also the courage that she has, because it takes a lot of courage to go up against like a man in a mask with a knife who's trying to kill you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the fact that her daughter and granddaughter also have those qualities definitely resonated with me as well. It's like, you know, yeah, their relationships might be strained, but they still are her, you know, in the end. And that's a good thing, I think. You know, I love seeing strong women in films, and I love seeing strong women in horror films, especially.
It seems like horror is a genre that has always been like it has strong feminist icons. It's been very just like pro woman, and it's always something that I've appreciated about that genre.
Me too. I think that's definitely an element that draws me to it as well. You know, because it's kind of a classic trope, you know, like you have that female main character who's constantly being chased around, but man, is she a badass.
Yeah, absolutely. So, any other slashers that you tend to like? What are your thoughts on Jason?
I it's a love-hate relationship. I love the idea of Jason. A lot of those movies though, I don't know, not a fan. But there are some movies that I really did enjoy as well. I think one thing though that I did like in the beginning was actually the Friday the 13th game that came out.
Yeah.
So there's mixed opinions there, and I know that the company is no longer updating the game, and
Yeah.
you know, it's kind of, things are strained there. Lots of people have kind of negative opinions of the company right now overall, but when that game first came out, I was like, wow, this is everything that I want a Friday the 13th movie to be, really, because you're a survivor and you're having to run around and you're trying to get out of here, and you're being chased by him. I don't know, I really loved the game in the beginning. I think the unfortunate thing about it is that, you know, with a game like that, when it gets so popular,
Yeah.
you know, you get the classic trolls, and it just doesn't make it fun anymore, and especially if they're not updating the game. Um but otherwise, I really enjoyed that as well.
I did enjoy the Friday the 13th game, like I said, quite a bit until like the whole like lawsuit thing came out and they said we're not gonna update the game anymore, and I was like, oh really? But yeah, it tended to be more fun playing it with friends than it did like just playing with a bunch of random people, because then you did get the trolls, as he
Yeah.
stated, and it was unfortunate because it was a good game in spite of the $40 price tag. It was a good game.
Right.
Yeah.
$40 game. That was a constant like joke between me and my friends as well.
Like, you
Man,
spent $40?
the glitches in the game in the beginning were pretty classic though. There were some great moments I had.
Yeah, especially like being able to just like stand in the car as it's like driving off.
Yes, or if your character just like flies up out of the map, or
Oh
you
my
know,
gosh.
under the map or something like that. Yeah, had some pretty great classic moments there.
I remember sometimes whenever I would play as Jason, the map would just glitch out and I would be stuck in the match even though the timer ran out. I would just be like, oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Or sometimes he would just warp to other places on the map, like suddenly, if your connection was weird. Sometimes that would happen to me. It's very strange. Yeah, I actually heard that, and I don't know where I read this. I don't know where my source came from on this, but I do remember when that lawsuit happened and they announced that they were no longer making the game. Um, I read that the lawsuit actually didn't bar them from updating the game.
I did read that, and like there's speculation as of like, well, maybe they're using the lawsuit to try and get out of updating the game. And it's just like, I can't really say like for sure like what's what because there's so much going on between Victor and Sean like in that lawsuit there.
Mm-hmm.
But if that is true, if they're just like using the lawsuit as an excuse for not updating the game, that's pretty crappy.
Yeah. Yeah, I really hope that that's not the case.
Yeah.
I hope that they, whatever is going on with that lawsuit, they just felt that it was just going to get in the way of them being able to bring great content to the game. I would rather accept that than them just being like, you know what, we give up.
Yeah, because it'd be like, oh,
So,
what even?
well, yeah, I mean, like, a lot of people invested a lot of time and energy and money into this game. A lot of people backed it up on Kickstarter. So it was disheartening to see, especially because the Jason X map and skin were set to come out next.
I know.
So I'm a little salty about it. Sorry.
I know. Even though that kind was god awful terrible.
Yeah.
Horrible. Yeah. But I kind of like, it's something.
It was terrible.
Yeah. Oh, looks like you're kind of cutting out a little bit. Just hang on just a second here.
Uh-oh.
No. Don't do it.
Yeah. Yeah, something strange happened there.
Yeah, it's just like you got all kind of for a second. Stupid, silly Discord.
Yeah. Let me see if I can close out anything here.
Yeah.
No
storm on my end. It's probably just weird internet things.
Well, I've been having a lot of weird internet issues lately.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, it seems to be okay now. But yeah, going back to the whole idea just of Jason X, yeah, that movie was god-awful terrible, but he looked cool with, like, that weird, like, kind of nanite technology, like, thing, armor and stuff like that. It's like, wow, if he isn't already unstoppable enough, let's just give him this, like, impenetrable armor.
Yeah, for sure. And it's a love-hate relationship too, right? Like, you always want to, like, really experiment with horror and like see what you can do and what boundaries you can push, but sometimes it doesn't work all the time.
Yeah, I think just the main, because I remember seeing a documentary about Jason. I think the main issue with it was just its continuity, because you had just Paramount going, okay, let's just make these movies because the previous one did well, money, 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 and each one had like a different director with a different take on it. It should have just been like one continuous storyline, but then of course in horror sometimes we don't get that. We get the franchise route.
Yeah. But I really liked like the look of it though. I agree with you there. Like I think if we would have had that map and that skin, that would have just been like just a blast to just play with. But
that would have been. But alas, it is not to be.
Yeah, I actually saw there was another streamer on Twitch who I was just watching one random night. I just happened to click on his channel and he was like, yeah, I actually got a hold of the Friday the 13th Jason X map. Somebody, like, whenever they announced that happening, I guess somebody who was involved with the game actually sent him like a demo of it, and it wasn't a completed map. They were not complete with making it, but they essentially, you could see the entire map and like how big it was, and it was actually a pretty massive map, but not all the parts you could actually go in, but you could walk around this map. And he did this for about 2.5 hours of him just walking around the map and just talking about what could have been. And I thought that was really, really fascinating to see. And it's even more of a disappointment, though, because I got to see it. And now it's just like, it's never going to happen.
No! that would have been me, too. It's like, why are you showing me this? Why are you breaking my heart?
I know. It's one of those things where I was just like, I want to see this. I can't look away, but I'm also just so disappointed.
Oh, yes. That would just, yeah. No,
Yeah.
okay, now I've got to get away from that because I'm just gonna be just like thinking about it. So
It's all good.
speaking of horror games, have there been any that you've been playing lately? Any that have caught your interest?
Um, yeah. So I actually just finished today Amnesia: The Dark Descent. I've never played any of the Amnesia games before. I've never even seen gameplay of them, but I know that they were super, super popular, and that they're kind of a classic horror game. So I decided to play it, and it was actually terrifying. It was terrifying to me. And of course, my viewers can't. They can't, they can't let me enjoy any nice things. They also spooked me the entire time I was playing it. So but that was super fun. I don't know if you're familiar with those games.
I have heard of them. I just never had a chance to really play through too much of them.
Yeah, I would recommend trying it. A lot of people have kind of stopped by and have said, "Oh yeah, I've always wanted to play this game, but I quit 5 minutes in because it's too scary." But I've been really interested in playing Outlast. A lot of people have recommended that to me. But I've never played it. I've seen Outlast 2. I've seen gameplay of that, but I've heard that the original is much like the first one is much scarier.
Oh my gosh, yes. I highly recommend Outlast, but you also have to get the Whistleblower DLC to go along with it too. You can't play Outlast without having that.
What is that DLC?
The Whistleblower DLC is it's almost like a prequel of sorts to the events that happen at the asylum, kind of like a prequel / it runs parallel to what's going on. I don't want to give too much away since you haven't played it yet, but it's
cool,
fabulous. That game about made me pee my pants.
That's awesome. Yeah. I mean, something that really resonates with me in any sort of horror game that I play is it's not necessary. It doesn't have to be like necessarily the content, but it has to be a good ambiance. So the Amnesia game was kind of clunky a little bit at times, and it wasn't like necessarily the prettiest game in the world, and there weren't a lot of like other characters in the game. It was a very bare bones and simple, but it was so creepy. Just everything they did with the sound for the most part, and then like kind of like the random scary moments in there just really really resonated with me. And so it doesn't have to be like full of action necessarily, or full of jump scares. It just has to have like the right ambience to it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I don't know if you've ever played the newest Resident Evil game, Resident Evil 7.
I have, yes.
I loved it. I loved it because it was so different than any of the other ones. But that was a game that I also completed recently.
Yeah, I loved Resident Evil 7, and since the main character, I could take or leave him. He is kind of boring in my opinion, but the surrounding story and the atmosphere was enough to kind of make me forgive that.
Yeah, I'm not really too big of like an action gamer kind of person, so I played The Evil Within, and I thought that was a fun game. It's fun if you like the shooting combat aspect of it. I didn't quite understand the story whatsoever. By the time I completed it, I was like, I'm not entirely sure what this game was even about, really. But I thought it was plenty creepy at the right moments, and I thought that the action gameplay was great. But I think that a truly good horror game like just immerses you in it. It's the immersion. It's you actually being in this world, and it's like psychologically hard to get out of. I mean, it's the same thing with horror movies, right? That's what makes a good horror movie to me anyway, is that it's not actually about like, the kills or the jump scares or, how much action is in it. It's about how scared it makes me.
Yeah, definitely, and how it just affects you psychologically, because you might end up leaving the movie or the game just like a totally changed person, whether it's you've peed your pants or whether it just leaves you something to think about. Speaking of, have you ever played Soma?
No, I haven't. I have it downloaded though. It's on my list.
That is something I highly recommend. If you liked Amnesia, so the same developers of Amnesia also made Soma. Cool. After that game was done, it's just I played it 2 years ago. And it still like resonates with me even almost 2 years later. It's just like, whoa. There's certain, it's not like the typical jump scare kind of creepy game. Like you said, the atmosphere is what makes that game, for sure.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna have to check that out then. Because I absolutely loved Amnesia. I will definitely be playing the other two games that are in the collection that I have. So I think Soma's gonna be right up my alley.
Yes, you will adore it. And so, going along the lines of horror games, are there any that you've played, whether recently or in the past, where you're just like, this is not scary at all. This is hot garbage.
That's actually a really good question. Because I get scared easily with games. It's weird. With movies, not so much, but with games, I think it's because I'm active with it. It's like an active, not like a passive kind of thing. And so as an active gamer, it's easy for me to get immersed in whatever game I'm playing, right? There hasn't been too many horror games that I've played where I'm like, wow, this was terrible, or it was hilarious and it didn't scare me at all. Like I found that there's something creepy in almost everything that I play. I would say that The Evil Within would probably be one of the only games that, there were moments that creeped me out, and there were moments that I had like one or two jump scares in that game. But overall, was not really a scary game. But I didn't think it was hot garbage either. The combat system was actually really good if you like that kind of thing. It's not necessarily my cup of tea, but I still had fun with it. I don't know, what about you? I'm curious. Do you have any of those experiences?
So I did try to play The Evil Within, and I could definitely tell there was Resident Evil 4 vibes. Especially, I think some of the developers of like Resident Evil were also involved with The Evil Within, and I got to around chapter 10 before I had to quit. Not because I thought the game was terrible like you, I thought it was a decent game. The story, even though it was simple, it was also pretty decent. It's those camera angles that they had. Like, it was so bizarre that it was like the moving kind of camera while also trying to keep the camera static. I get motion sickness in games when it comes to stuff like that, so that's what affected me, and I had to stop.
Oh yeah, I mean if the overall mechanics in the game are going to affect you in that way, you're not going to enjoy it. Yeah. For sure. I totally understand, because there have been a few games where like I kind of get that a little bit, and it's like like I know that the classic Resident Evil games, they have those like camera angles where they just stay fixed.
Yes.
But that actually really annoys me. It's why I've never played any of the original ones, not because I don't want to, because I actually kind of really do, but at the same time I know that in of itself is going to probably frustrate me into not enjoying it, and I don't want to have that experience. Right. I'd rather watch somebody play it and enjoy that kind of experience than myself get frustrated and crap all over a really good game.
Yeah, I mean, I hear ya. If you're frustrated with any portion of the game, whether it's mechanics, whether it's the story, then if you're not enjoying it, then as a content creator, if you're not enjoying it, then neither is your audience.
Exactly. Yeah. Luckily though, my venture into content creation is actually fairly new. I've been streaming since February. I do have a little bit of YouTube background experience, but really this year I decided to really, really get started. And one of the things that I just couldn't stay away from, because I'm like, what kind of creator do I want to be? This journey never ends, right? Like what kind of a person am I going to be, and what kind of an audience am I going to cultivate? What kind of content am I going to create? In that journey, I could not stay away from horror. Surprise. I started with Undertale, and I was like, well, I really like playing games like Fallout 4, and I like playing JRPGs and RPGs and like small little indie games that don't get a lot of traction. I like playing those. But at the end of the day, I also really love playing horror games because they're fun. It is fun to be scared sometimes.
Yes, it is.
So I started doing Spoopy Saturdays every Saturday. I do a scary game, but the month of October has been great. So great for horror. So I'm very excited. I'm kind of almost thinking about just doing horror content creation. I'm kind of leaning that way because I'm just having a blast. it's really, really fun. And I feel like it gets the audience involved too. If they're a fan of horror or if they like seeing you scared, I think that can only be a good thing, right?
Exactly. My audience, I know, likes seeing me scream because I'll just scream at the most like random things, like if something shocks me, like, oh, it's like, oh wait, it's just someone walking by. Never mind.
Yes, but that happens to me all the time too. Again, it's that immersion factor, it's the active role of playing a game, and even just somebody walking by scaring you. It's a lot of fun.
It is, man, and like you, I kind of, I recently made the shift to just all out horror content creation. Like, I haven't even been doing it for I've been doing it for about maybe this would be my second month. I used to be a big time variety streamer, but instead of also you played a lot of Undertale, I used to play a lot of Five Nights at Freddy's. That was my main thing. It's just like, these aren't scary. This is just like jump scare 5,000. That's really all it was.
Yeah.
They use jump scares way too much in that game.
Right.
and like with movies, if you use jump scares too much, they kind of lose their effectiveness.
Yeah, exactly. I think a good jump scare is used very sparsely, but in the right moments. You can definitely do it well, but I think too much is not a good thing.
Exactly, because it kind of desensitizes you to it. And you're just like, oh, wow, yet another jump scare.
Yeah, wow, the music got louder, so I guess I'm going to be spooked now. Oh, there it is,
So,
sure.
along the lines of like hot garbage stuff, has there been any horror movies recently where you've just been like, ew, what is this?
Oh,
Gosh. They could be like ones that came out recently or ones that maybe you watched on Netflix. That
there've been a lot, but it's to the point where I don't even remember the titles because I just want to forget about them.
Yeah.
There have been a lot of horror movies where I'm like, that wasn't scary. But I think the other side of horror that I really enjoy is the campiness factor. So I think that you can also do it that way very well. And I think at the end of the day, if a horror movie is bad, at least it's kind of funny. So
yeah, I would agree with you there. I think the last one that I saw where I was just like, meh. Oh my goodness, hello! My puppers came in.
Oh, hi, puppy. So cute.
So I think the most recent horror movie that I saw that I was just like, meh.
Okay, let's close this.
All right. So the most recent one that I saw recently where I was just like, no, was Oculus.
I've not seen that.
It's the one that's about the evil mirror that's terrorizing a family. And
I think I've vaguely heard of this movie, actually. I don't think I've seen it, though.
It's it was an intriguing prospect because I'd never seen one that had that kind of oh cool, an evil cursed object, because you see the tropes all the time about the evil haunted house and now the person needs to be exorcised. You see that all the time. So this is the first time I've actually, for me, I've kind of seen something about a cursed object. And it did well, but to me at the end it kind of fell flat. You may not have the same experience, but if you want to give it a shot, go ahead.
Maybe. Yeah. I mean, I'll never Sorry, I just saw one of my viewers just say it's bad.
Yeah, it's bad.
Yeah, so I'm never going to go into any sort of viewing experience with a negative mindset. I always go into it with a positive, this could be really great. But I would say 50% of the time I'm disappointed.
Aww.
So, I don't know. It just, it never lives up to my expectations. Sometimes when I see a horror film, but like I said, at the end of the day, sometimes it's just kind of funny and I can laugh at it. I can find something that I enjoy in anything that I watch, I'm sure.
Yeah, even if it's just meh. Well, at least that one part maybe was shot well or the story was good. Like that.
Yeah,
kind of
exactly.
So let's now make the shift into horror and its influence on your fashion. As I complimented before the podcast started, you have a lovely top there, all skeleton-like and stuff, and
Thank
it's so
you.
cute. And I think you also mentioned like before, like whenever like we were talking back and forth, that you have been to a lot of horror conventions and that horror was such a big influence on your fashion. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I actually have an educational and uh, career background in fashion. So I graduated with an apparel merchandising degree, um, which basically means fashion business for anyone else who doesn't know. And then I also have been working in fashion retail for about 15 years. So for about half of my life, um, I've been working in retail, and um, I'm very passionate about it. I love aesthetics. I think that's maybe why I love horror movies so much, and why part of it is the aesthetics for me, that makes it really good. Um, and I've always been kind of a weirdo, you know. And so that's always just naturally transferred into my fashion. So you know, back in middle school and high school, I went through my emo phase, and clearly never left. um I'm sure lots of other people can relate. You know, you kind of go through those moments in times of your life where things are weird and kind of hard, and you don't really know like how to really be a person yet, right? You're growing up, and
Right.
like you're also kind of a weirdo, and so you're not traveling down the beaten path or whatever. And so that's always like just resonated with me in my fashion, and that I've always just done the opposite of whatever anyone else is doing. So everyone's dyeing their hair blonde, well, I'm over here dyeing my hair black, you know. Everybody's wearing Abercrombie and Fitch t-shirts, and I'm over here wearing a coat from Hot Topic.
Much better
um,
choice, in my opinion.
I agree. I agree. I would still rock that fur coat that I got from Hot Topic back in the day. I would still rock that today. Um, but yeah, so it's just always kind of been ingrained in me that the dark kind of atmospheric things that I like about horror just constantly transfer into my everyday life, and that starts with when I wake up in the morning and get dressed. um you know, it starts with my makeup choices. It starts with just, you know, how I'm going to present myself as a person for the day. um and so yeah, I've always been interested in fashion anyway. And you know, I have a lot of really awesome retailers that I like to purchase from. I like a lot of these kind of dark spooky designs. um and yeah, I've worked in various different types of retail settings as well. um and I think you know, even though I've never like worked at a Hot Topic before, and there's really not a whole lot of retail fashion stores that are like that. But I've been lucky enough to work in environments where they really encourage you to kind of just dress whatever you want,
That's
to
good.
just be the kind of person that you want to be. So this is who I am, you know. This is who I am. You know, I've always been interested in uh just anything that's not currently a fashion, like anything that's not like a current fad, you know. um and so I look for those influences in my life, and I think that the horror to fashion is just a natural transition.
Hey, do you have any fashion icons or maybe horror fashion icons that you look up to?
um I mean, I guess I would look at characters in horror movies.
Okay.
I would look at characters in horror movies. I would also look at like my music influences a lot too. Um, but I would say like people like uh Wednesday Adams and Morticia Adams. Like those are
Yes.
classic. If you're looking at Elvira, um like any of those like women who are just, you know, it's all black, but it's like very classy still. It's classy and trashy at the same time. and I just love it. I don't know. And again, it's something about like that strong woman kind of mindset also that transfers. And I mean, like it all is connected. It's really hard to describe. Um, it's all connected in a way. And I think that, as a person who tries to be a strong female feminist as myself, I really look to those types of characters, not only for my fashion sense, but just to be that kind of person that I strive to be. So
yeah, it definitely like shows through. Like I said, in your fashion choices, it's just like it's unique, but it's also really cool. Where horror influences me in my life is not necessarily in my fashion, but a lot of just like the story choices and the game choices and the movie choices that I make. So that's where it influences me. So definitely, I don't think I could be brave enough to pull off a look like that. So,
oh, you totally could. Let me do your makeup sometime. It'll be fine.
That's okay. Yeah, down like whenever I'm near, if I'm ever near your area again, I will definitely take you up on that.
Yeah. Let me dye your hair. It'll be great.
Yeah, I actually did have my hair dyed blue and purple. And so, like, all this leftover, the blonde stuff is like the leftover bleach. So I'm trying to let my hair grow out because I miss my natural hair color. So
yeah,
but,
I understand that. Yeah. Sometimes I go back and forth too. I'm like, well, I really want to dye my hair black, but then I know once I do it, I'm gonna be like, actually, I really miss my turquoise hair or my purple hair or whatever I decide to do.
Oh, someone in chat said, Proud Mom said that you met Elvira at a horror convention?
So I didn't meet her, but I did kind of brush arms with her, which is kind of still.
Hey,
I'm. Just, I had a moment. Okay, I had a moment. I was wow. She just walked by me. But yeah, it was at a horror convention that I go to twice a year. It's called Horror Hound. There's one in Indianapolis, and then there's one in oh gosh. Why am I blanking? Dayton, Ohio? Columbus, Ohio?
One of the cities in Ohio.
Cincinnati. I'm sorry. Cincinnati, Ohio, and Indianapolis, Indiana. I go to those every year. They have one in March, and then they have one in, I think, August or September. And I'm friends with quite a few people who run it. I'm friends with quite a few people. They also do horror movie showings of like very small, sort of independent up and coming creators. They'll do sort of like a film festival type thing there at the convention. So I'm friends with a lot of people who run that or who have made films for that. And one of the films that got a lot of attention was called Found by Scott Shermer. And I don't know if anyone here has ever heard of it. It's an excellent movie based out of Indiana. And he actually ended up winning a contest that year to be able to fly out to California, where Elvira essentially sort of introduced the movie to a big audience over in California. And so she came to the convention because she had such like a great time connecting with these people that she ended up coming to the convention and doing a whole thing there. So yeah, it was pretty neat. But that convention, man, I love it because I get to see like all these icons all the time. And some of them are just so cool. You could just walk right up to them and say hello, and they're totally cool. Yeah. I love that. I think that the horror community is just really relaxed like that. It's not like classic Hollywood. It's kind of a different thing in itself.
Absolutely. The horror community on a whole is just so kind, so awesome, so welcoming, and the best part of that is being able to chat with them about horror, because there's not many people I can chat with about horror.
Yeah, for sure. And like a lot of the celebrities that go to those horror conventions too are just a lot of them kind of can't believe that so many people are so interested in like these weird little things that they do. So they're very, very interested in actually walking up to you and shaking your hand and meeting you and saying hi. And, you don't necessarily have to pay for an autograph. They're just kind of around. And that's really neat. That's really, really cool to see. It's refreshing. It's like, these are people too, and they're just as weird as we are.
So besides your Elvira moment, any notable people that you have met any of the horror conventions you've been to?
I'm trying to think of anyone that I've really met. I have not had the pleasure actually walking up to too many people. There was one guy who was in oh gosh, which one is it? It's not Dawn of the Dead. Land of the Dead?
Okay.
It was the main zombie in Land of the Dead. The really tall guy, the one that actually essentially sort of like rounded up everybody and like was
Right.
the leader of the zombies. I met him and he was super nice. I was just walking by his booth and he was just like, "Hey," and I was like, "Oh my god, hi."
How are
Hello.
you?
We had a little conversation. We had a little moment, but that was really nice to see. And nobody was at his booth.
Oh.
I was so surprised. I think he was just like, "I want to talk to somebody." So I was like, "Hello, you're amazing."
How cool.
Yeah, that was really neat. I mean, I've seen a lot of people, but you know, a lot of them, you know, charge an arm and a leg for photo ops and things like that. So unfortunately, I haven't had the pleasure of meeting so many people. But last year when I went to Horror Hound, actually this past time when I went in September, I did get to see the Evil Dead 2 panel with Bruce Campbell and like the cast of the Evil Dead 2, and they did an entire panel. Yeah, it was really, really awesome. He is a character in real life, let me tell you.
I bet. Just even seeing him on his Twitter, I follow him on his Twitter. It's just like, oh god, I would just love to like meet him one day.
I just feel like Bruce Campbell as a person is just the exact same person as any of his characters that he plays on TV or movies. Like he's just kind of him.
Absolutely.
But that was super entertaining to see. I would say that the Evil Dead series is one of my favorite series of all time. So getting to see them and hearing them talk about their experiences on set was really, really cool. Yeah.
Envious. I'm kind of envious there. That would have been like amazing to go see.
I couldn't miss it. Yeah.
So, all right. Now in the last few minutes that we have, I'm going to open it up to the chat for a Q&A. So does anybody have any questions that they want to ask Rissa about anything horror movies, games, clothes?
Yeah. Maybe not Hot Topic. I see them talking a lot about Hot Topic in chat.
Yeah, maybe not Hot Topic. Oh, so we got a question from Psycho Chain Gang. Any personal scary stories you can tell us? So have you personally had any scary experiences?
Well, here's the thing. I don't necessarily believe in ghosts, but I have had some weird things happen to me in my life. I'm sure everybody has had like little moments where you're like, what was that? But this is actually a story about my parents. So my mom called me up one day and she was like, this really weird thing happened last night. And it's probably, it just was so funny because she's like, it was probably just ghosts, but it's fine. And I was like, what are you talking about? I don't necessarily believe in ghosts. I believe in experiences, right? And she said that they were sleeping, my parents were sleeping, and in the middle of the night, they heard a loud crash, like a glass crashing on the floor. And, they both woke up kind of in a panic, and it's like, is there somebody in the house? Like, what happened? Like, did something just fall off like a counter or something like that? And, my mom was like, my dad, go get downstairs, go see who it is, go check that out. And he like ran down the stairs in a panic. And when he got downstairs, there just was a wine glass just sitting in the middle of the floor, but like no broken glass. It wasn't toppled over or anything. It was just sitting in the middle of the floor. And they had a wine rack in the kitchen, but they were hung up, upside down in the rack. But it was just sitting there. And there's been no explanation, nothing. So that's weird, right?
Yeah.
Kind of weird. No one's ever been able to explain it, but I love it because my mom's just like, oh yeah, it's the ghost. And she's just like, this is totally fine.
Just like, okay, Mom.
Right, sure. I think me personally, though, I actually did have kind of a weird experience in my own house. I moved here at this location probably about 1.5 years ago from another city. And this is our first house that we've ever rented. I've always like just lived in apartments since I left high school and college. And this is the first house, right? So it's very exciting. And on day 3 of living here, well, number one, when we first moved in, there's a giant scary pit in our basement. It's hard to describe, but it's like it basically drops off from the concrete on the floor of the basement. And there's just like this giant dirt/rock pit down there. And it is kind of spooky a little bit. It's a very spooky basement. Haven't thought anything of it. But 3 days later, after moving into this house, my friends and I, we were having a 4th of July party out in our backyard, and people are starting to file in. We're grilling, everything's fine. And all of a sudden, this big rock, probably about this big, just flies out of nowhere, flies past me and hits the house. And I was like, that's very strange. There is a tree there. So I was like, naturally, it must be just like a squirrel or something. But this rock was so big and round, and like it looked like something you would find at a lake. And it was too big for any small like woodland creature to carry up on its own, I think. So that's very strange. Definitely wasn't a person. And so we kind of have this running joke that we have a ghost in our basement living in the pit. We put the rock down there as an offering.
Wow. You live in a haunted house.
How appropriate.
Yeah.
That's just appropriate for me, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Amityville.
Yeah, Amityville. Hey, so I guess the one last question that we'll have time for is Starscream asks, what is your favorite horror villain and your favorite horror movie of all time?
Wow. Okay. Oh, man. This is a tough question. Everybody who's ever asked me this question, I'm always like, oh my God, I don't even know how to answer this. I would say that my favorite scary movie is probably the original Evil Dead. For a lot of reasons, but it was a movie that had some camp to it, but it was well done. It was in a way that I felt like it didn't ruin the movie, because it also was kind of creepy and scary. And I just loved the practical effects in that movie. I loved the acting. I loved Bruce Campbell. I loved just the idea of the film itself. So that's definitely probably up there in one of my favorite horror movies. I think the Evil Dead series overall is probably my favorite series next to Halloween. But definitely the Evil Dead, I think, original movie. My favorite horror villain would have to be probably Leatherface.
Ooh.
Because he is scary as hell.
Yeah.
I kind of have a fear of chainsaws. I'm not going to lie.
Wow. Yeah. Especially if it's someone like that holding them.
Yeah. Something about a man with a chainsaw and he's mentally unstable and wearing someone else's face. Something about that really, really scares me.
Yeah, I would think so as well. Well, so this looks like this is going to wrap things up. I wanted to keep it down to just about an hour because that's all I had you for tonight. But, man, this is awesome. Thank you so much for being a guest on my podcast tonight.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been so much fun.
I am so glad. And plug yourself. So where can people find you on Twitch, on Twitter, and when's the next time you're streaming, and what will you be streaming?
Yeah, so I stream, I'm a variety streamer over on Twitch. You can find me at twitch.tv/RissaHavok. I'm also on Twitter at RissaHavok. And then I have a Discord server if anybody would like to join. We're pretty active and we really love to hang out and talk about all sorts of weird things. We're all weirdos in there. I also am a host and content creator on Linear Radio YouTube. So that's youtube.com/the linear radio. We do a lot of different types of variety gaming content, usually with groups over there. And you can find me streaming pretty much between 4 and 5 days a week over on Twitch. The next time I'll be streaming will be Tuesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we will probably, I'm not entirely sure what we're going to play next, to be honest with you. I want to play another scary game. So I'm kind of thinking it's either going to be some Fallout 4 Far Harbor DLC, or it's going to be possibly Darkwood. But then there's also a possibility it could be Resident Evil 4.
Ooh, so all good choices.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like I'll definitely have to hit you up sometime. Like maybe play some spooky games together.
You know, I saw that you play Dead by Daylight, and I actually have been really, really into it lately. So if you ever want to play, you know where I'm at.
Oh, yes, definitely. And like I said, once again, thank you so much.
Thank you
for being on my podcast. I'm glad that you had fun, and it was fun talking to you about horror and everything horror and horror related things. And
yes, I had a great time. Thank you so much again for having me. Your community has been really great, and I love talking horror. So if you ever want to do it again sometime, I'm here.
Absolutely. I will definitely keep that in mind.
Cool.
Well, you have a great rest of your night.
Thank you so much. You too. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.